So there may be times where you're just trying to figure out stuff in Power Query, but one of the things that you'll run across is how do I convert a zero or how do I change those into a different value? Maybe I don't want discounts to show zero, I want it to show null. Well, what's the easiest way to do that? So one of the easiest ways that you can do this in Power Query is you can right click it and you can click transform. And we see these different options, right? You can either do some different text transformations, but if you go right here and replace values, what that's going to do, it's going to basically do what a coalesce function is in SQL or an if else statement. You could also use that. But I just think the simplest ways is just to hit replace values here, and we have 0. And maybe you don't want those to show as 0. You want them to be blank when they come out. So you could say if null, and you replace with null. So now they're all null. So that's just one way you can do this. Now, if we go over here, we can try a different thing. What if we want it to be blank? Because technically there is blanks. It's not just null, right? So if I come over here under the discount column and I click right here, if I come here and I click right here under value find, and let's just say I type in null because we flipped to the null, and I say replace with blank. Now, is that going to do anything? No, it's requiring me. And if I do this, which would typically be the blank, it doesn't give you that blank, right? It says error. You can't do that. And it says enter a number value. So you can only have numbers in this column, so you can't use blank, right? So number columns, you can't do that typical replace with a blank, but you can do null. So just be aware of this when you're doing that. But also here, you can see these empties are already here. So are these empties really the ones that we're seeing here? So if we go over here, it's registering the empties as null, because if we click remove empty, we can see that was the issue, is that the nulls are being registered and the data profile is empty. So that's one way to do it. I think you're not going to want to filter most of those out because it could be off like a left join or something like that, where when you merge data, you get nulls. So that's something to kind of look at. But other ways to do this, you could do a conditional column. And let's go look at that real quick because I think this is good to know. So remember how we couldn't do that before? So let's say if discounts, this is going to be really blow your mind. If discounts equals 0, then blank, right? So let's just see what that does. It actually goes blank, guys. So isn't that crazy? We see the 8% valid, but the else empty is the other. So we flipped it to that else, but we could say else discounts, right? Because we want to bring the discounts back in. So we could go back. So it said if discounts equals 0, then null, or it would be null. It'd be blank instead of null. Then we could get discounts. So you have to use a conditional statement if you want it to be blank. Now, let's do this. If we go back over here and we say if discounts null, it works. Okay? So kind of a weird quirk. So you can't use the replace necessarily. Replace values, you have to use a conditional statement if you want it to be blank, but you could just use a conditional statement for this. But the easiest way to do this, of course, is to replace the values with null if you're able to do that. So that's one way to kind of update your data and make it kind of have this cool theme. But something a lot of people may not be aware of, they might get stuck on this and trying to figure it out. And of course, you can replace it with whatever you want. Maybe you don't want 0 to be that. You could have if null now. If null, oh, not nuke. If null, how do you say that, guys? If null, we could say, oh, for whatever reason, it's going to be 1999999. They do that in some old databases, but you could do something like that, right? So everything was null there, and then all those nulls are insane. So that's going to throw off those averages. But one of the things I will say is you notice how the data type doesn't finish here. Then when you need to go back and say, okay, fixed, to get it back over, and then maybe you'd want to rename that column to what you want. So just something to kind of look at. Obviously, we have a huge outlier here because we just added it, but some cool things with null values and blanks that you should be aware of when you're working with Power Query. Then, of course, when you go back and you load those back in to Power BI, things can get interesting. So we'll just load that in real quick. I just want to show you guys what it looks like when we do a load in. So if you hold down, if you click something, hit shift and you highlight all these and click remove other columns, we can load that in and we can see exactly what this is going to look like in the table that we load back in here. So we're loading it, the schema is loading, it's loading its data, and we can see, okay, what is that? It's just blank. So it doesn't really matter, honestly. But those other columns are going to show up as blanks in Power BI. As we can see here, that very top column was a good example. And then we could say, include or keep those and filter those by a slicer. So if we go back over here, let's say our slicer is custom, we can see that it comes in as a blank even though we chose null. So really, you can kind of see what that means from behind the scenes when it comes over. It's just looking at that as a null. So um, that is how nulls and blanks kind of work, bringing over from Power Query into Power BI. I hope that was helpful for you. I hope it gave you some insights on so you can kind of figure out the quickest way to work with data.